I like salad. Do you like salad?
Hi, I'm Hostion Ho. I'm living in Vancouver, BC, Canada, unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm an immigrant to Canada from China.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea coming to you from Victoria, but more importantly known as unceded Akwesasne territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, and I am an immigrant from the United States of America. And you're listening to
Canadian salad.
Canadian salad.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yes, welcome
Yay.
back. How's
Yeah,
your
this is gonna be
week
fun.
been?
Oh gosh. Well, I think it's been good. I don't know. I feel like the week just goes by and then it's already like, what? It's Tuesday? This is
I know. I mean, the first week of New Year is always fast because you have so
it
much,
is so fast.
yeah, so
Yeah.
much work to kind of pick up or like things to kind of get done because everything's on pause for so long.
Yeah, and you're still in vacation mode. I think I'm still in the
Yeah.
like, no, I'm having a break. I don't have to answer any emails and I have this massive deadline due at the end of the month and I'm thinking, when am I going to get this done? I'm still on
Oh,
vacation. So,
I
anyway.
already out of them. Oh my God. The first day I got to work, it just like things hit my face
Really?
hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
50,000
Oof.
emails. Oh my
I
gosh.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even
Yeah.
joking. So that's
Yeah.
hard. But
Yeah. It is
we're
hard.
gonna now get to have a break here.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna have a
A
break
nice
here
break. Yeah.
to talk
I
about
might,
something that's not about work.
no.
But it
Although
is,
people have worked hard
yeah,
for to change. Really. I mean, it
true,
encompasses a lot of work in economics and things like that.
true. I mean,
So,
all this
yeah.
knowledge that we're gonna, you know, pass down.
Give to
It's a
you
lot of work.
masses who are
Yeah, give
invisible
to
to us.
masses.
Yeah, just so
Exactly.
you
There's a
know,
lot of
we
work.
labor really hard for you. But yeah, today we're going to talk about a really kind of crunchy, like cringeworthy phrase that I've heard, I've used. We're going to talk about the term third world country. I said it
Yeah.
again. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to talk about the history, the context, really, and then what actually does it really mean? Should we even be using it anymore? And what are some alternatives? I honestly am very excited to have this conversation, Hoshin. So,
Yeah.
as
You
as
said you
cringy as
used
it is,
third world the term before, so in what kind of
yeah,
scenario you should use it? What is your story?
yeah. So, third world country would always be related to a very severe tragedy or devastation. I can only compare it to kind of how I would use first world country problems or first world problems. So sometimes I'd be like, oh, I couldn't find the right parking space. First world problems. Oh no, my store doesn't have my favorite cereal. First world problems. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
if it's not war, struggle, poverty, then it's only first world. But if it's struggle, poverty, war, it's always third world. It's really gross, actually, when I remember like how I used it. But yeah, that's kind of how I would always associate that term.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, same thing. For
Yeah.
me, it's very different. I mean, of course, it's an English term. I
Okay.
cannot think of like equivalent kind
Okay.
of like we really don't use the word third world problem in Cantonese or in Mandarin. I don't, at least I don't know of
Interesting.
like
Yeah.
a term similar to that.
Are there any terms kind of referred to kind of the
The
more
current
Asia
meaning, yeah.
Pacific, African areas?
Yeah, we do. Like China, at least when I was still studying there, we use like developed country and developing country to kind
Oh,
of
interesting. Okay.
differentiate maybe the first world versus the third world kind of differences.
Okay.
So of course we like China, for example, China, India, or Philippines, for example, or
Mm,
some African countries will be developing countries, and
interesting.
then like
Interesting.
Canada and the States will be developed country.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting. So there was a
yeah.
concept of that kind of ideology. That
Yeah, of
ideology was
like
there, even though it wasn't maybe this exact phrase.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
different ideology that differentiates like the rich and
Right.
very, very advanced technology and finance and trade
Yeah.
wise, and then there's
Mm.
other country that's less so. Remember, there's like a specific kind of like criteria to measure whether it's like a country is a developing country or developed country. I think it's like some sort of
Got you.
GDP per capita kind of thing, but I don't
Yeah.
remember a specific
Yeah.
number now. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, it's probably invented and written by European or Western countries,
I
right?
won't be
They're the ones
surprised.
defining it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is an English term. This is a term, and we're going to dive right into the history and the context. So, this was a term coined during the Cold War. Actually, in 1952, there was an article written by a French demographer, Alfred Sauvy. My apologies for getting his French name wrong, but he wrote this article called Three Worlds, One Planet. Okay. And so it was used to describe countries who were capitalist allies with the US at the time. So it would be Western Europe, Japan, Australia. So this is Cold War. This is after World War II. The Cold War, look it up. I don't want to get into it because that's a big old thing. But then there were three worlds. The second world would be those who were the communists, right? The
Yep.
Soviet Union and Eastern European allies, right?
China,
Okay, yeah, China.
China.
Exactly. Exactly. And so then third world were all those other countries not aligned with either the West or the East in the Cold War context, but they
Hmm.
always included specifically colonized countries. So like colonized countries by Europe, like Africa, Middle East, Latin America, and Asia.
India.
Yeah,
Yeah.
India,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. But that was where it began. A French European coined this term and it stuck. I don't know how people do this. This is what I don't understand. Like some French dude was just sitting in his desk and being like, "Oh, I'm going to write this article." And everyone's like, "Ooh, great idea. Let's go with it, world." And all the world's like, "Sure."
It's
Except
70
for,
years later. I know
I
70 years
know,
later, we still use the same term.
exactly. I hope I am memorable for positive things and not negative things, but that's my hope. But so the second world did disappear kind of after the Soviet Union collapsed and communism was vanquished, all this rhetoric and terminology, but it's still used. There's an excellent article written by the Boston Law School. It actually came out in 1980, which I think is still relevant because we're still talking about the article is called Toward a Definition of the Third World. It puts the world's countries in camps, right?
Hmm.
Us versus them. And you
Brackets,
don't,
yes.
yeah, you don't believe like us, you don't have a weighty opinion, you're not involved, so therefore you are in some ways discredited. And so this is kind of the underlying message that we get from third world country. I mean, it began as a political statement and it really morphed and started to evolve. I think it was 1947 or yeah, from 1947, where countries within this third world bracket started to gain their own independence. We're saying we're done being colonized. We want to govern ourselves. We want to create our own systems. We want to create our own economies. We're done. We're going to rename all of our states, like India did, right? They
Hmm.
completely renamed everything. And so a lot of them are breaking away from colonial superpowers in the 1950s and 60s. And the third world was starting to they were kind of evolving into their own, in some ways, their own organization. It was in 1975. There was a private organization called the Third World Forum, and it was organized in Karachi, Pakistan. And it had African, Asian, and Latin American countries where they came together to discuss how to develop now that independence was theirs and their systems. Because their systems were a mess, right? You've got
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
British, you've got your French, you've got your Spanish, you've got all of these European countries, the Dutch, coming in and basically rewriting everything. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
all of a sudden, this third world forum became a much more unified piece where it says, fine, you guys are going to include us. We need to decide what we're going to do. And they did
Hmm.
it, and they have been
Yeah.
doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it eventually led to their participation in the UN and a much more representation than they had during the Cold War when this term was phrased. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's kind of the background. Any thoughts on that notion?
I mean, that term first, as we mentioned, the Europeans always using terms, and
Yes.
that is in favor of themselves. Let's be
Yeah,
honest
of
there.
course, of
I don't
course.
know why they don't call themselves a third world, and then, all the Africans are the first world. What?
Exactly,
But that kind of
exactly.
ranking, often
Yeah,
also using first, second, third is such a hierarchy,
it is.
gonna embed
Yes,
it in it. That's just
yes. We're gonna talk
it,
about that.
the,
Yeah.
that superiority just embedded in that word to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
already
Mm-hmm.
bring in that negativity, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
discrimination in the word itself. Or you only came in third, which
Mm-hmm.
in this term they're the last, obviously, and
Yeah,
that is kind of whatever. But
I
I'm
know.
also glad that sometimes many terms are even like in a queer community, like faggot is like a bad word that was like described using to describe us, obviously. But then nowadays, a
Okay.
lot of people will take that word back and they even use that word to as their stage name or how they call each other. So like I think what you mentioned about them, a lot of quote unquote three world country having a third world forum to take back that
Mm-hmm.
term and also
Mm-hmm.
as use it as a way to unite themselves also is that kind of
Yeah.
spirit. We, no matter how much you push us down to the ground, we will find a way to rise up
Yeah,
using
completely.
exactly the term that you give it to us.
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly. I
think
like to,
there's also, yeah,
yeah.
there's
I
power to that. That's what I'm trying to say.
There
Yeah.
is, there is. And it's so unfair. It's kind of like imagine being in a race, right? And you're getting ready
Mm-hmm.
to race, and all the other runner competitors beat you up before the
Mm-hmm.
race.
Yeah,
You
they
run the
do. Yeah.
race, you get third place, and they're like, you're in third place, winner. Well,
Which
I
is the
only got
last.
third place. I only got last because you beat me up. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
so that's
Yeah.
my fault. So I get these negative terms. So I get put, kind of in the garbage can of economic
Yeah.
development. So it is
Exactly.
so unjust and it is so unfair. And I have so many feelings around it. But yeah, like you said, it is very much, it establishes that hierarchy. And we're going to get into kind of the social and cultural impacts of that. Like, if it's so old though, why is it that we still use this? Because I know that there has been like 1952 people were what 72 years since
Mm-hmm.
the term was phrased, and I still hear it. I think part of that is that the term in socioeconomics and politics really evolved to an economic status.
Yeah.
So, right, those kinds of systems that, that it very much encapsulates, kind of like you said in China, it encapsulates kind of that economic prosperity, the GDP, the income, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there was a really great interview with on National Public Radio, and this person interviewed quite a few people from quote unquote third world countries. And
Mm-hmm.
there's still this kind of some people, and maybe this is internalized racism, it's hard to know, but they interviewed one person. She's a economist and researcher at the Center for Equity Studies in New Delhi, and her response to the term third world country, she says, if you look at any human development indicators such as child and maternal health, nutrition, sanitation, we're worse than Bangladesh, she said. There's another gentleman who he was a credit manager at a Punjab National Bank. And he says that being called a developing country, not third world, but developing, gives me a chance to improve, hoping that one day India will go a few steps beyond what other countries have achieved. But again, I think it's still this form of power and control and establishing that hierarchy, and that's why we still use it. Because then later she interviewed another person in this interview. She was a social psychologist at the University of Cape Town, and she said, quote, I dislike the term developing world because it assumes a hierarchy, like we said, between countries.
Yes.
It paints a picture of Western societies as ideal, but there are many social problems in these societies as well. Truth. It also perpetuates stereotypes about people who come from the so-called developing world as backward, lazy, ignorant, and irresponsible. And that's just spot on, right? Even though it's in all of these academic frameworks, it's in our politics, it's in, social sciences, it is gaining some traction to change because it is a very derogatory term because of all the things that we have
Um,
capitalized on. Yeah, I mean that's why how I see why we still use it. What do you think, Ocean?
I mean, every term when is until a new term that is discovered or being kind of widely used and accepted, the old terms always gonna be there. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of terms that we are currently using, I can think of some of them that are like just bad terms. We still,
Yeah.
like the word Oriental, for example. Before it was
Mm.
very commonly used to describe like, East Asians, and now because of, progress, less and less, I would say still some people still use it. I still heard those terms, in many different situations, but still because, change, people are slowly using, for example, terms like East Asians are, which is way more correct, obviously. So I can see that sometimes it just takes time for terms to catch up to social change, to social awareness, in many ways too. And as you also just lay out all the circumstances, no matter it's social, no matter it's political, there was reason that it was widely used, and some people just hold on to it maybe a bit too long. That's all
Yeah.
that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
72 years. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. It's a bit too long. Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we just, as you mentioned, that this term had definitely, for example, the hierarchy part definitely had does harm to us. But um, what do you think is the social and the cultural meaning of it, and
Yeah.
exactly how does it harm us?
I think capitalizing on that hierarchy, it creates those power dynamics that do not have to be there. It
Yeah.
creates those power dynamics that get us into world conflicts that we shouldn't be in. We don't have to be in any conflicts right now if we but view everyone just as equal as ourselves, right? But
Mm-hmm.
these power imbalances and these power dynamics are so harmful, and they're so embedded in our society. It leaks into how we vote. It leaks into how we see maybe people of color elected into office. It just creates a hierarchy that, you know what, it's not there, and it needs to not be there, right? It also creates a sense of superiority, right, for the other,
Mm-hmm.
right, for your first world folks, right?
Because I'm first,
um
yes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm first, right? The other thing is that it generalizes countries who have significantly transformed their economies, their systems, their governments after decades and centuries of colonization and oppression,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I know there are so many countries on the African continent that have worked so hard to rebuild what Europeans literally destroyed. And they're
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
still rebuilding that. And to say that third world, still at the bottom. It's kind of like
Yeah.
we're not though. We're not. Right. And
Yeah,
I mean, a huge example, we've got South Africa filing a brief to the International Court of Justice, right?
exactly. No other country was doing.
No, this is out of the African continent. So to generalize, or even to say that, Hong Kong's development or Bangladesh's development, or the way that other countries have had to rebuild, but it's not like us. You can look at some cold hard facts and realize that a lot of first world problems are not third world problems. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. It also implies that in some ways, to tag on that a lot of countries are still behind. You just
Yeah.
you haven't adopted democracy yet. So you're at the bottom,
Oh,
right? You
yeah.
haven't, your women aren't treated as fairly as women are here in the US or Canada. Okay. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
It continues that division, and it really lacks legitimacy. There is no concrete evidence that that a country named first world is
Mm-hmm.
somehow legitimately and factually better off than those quote unquote third world countries. For example, okay, US homelessness.
I know you're gonna talk about US.
Sorry. Canada doesn't have as much homelessness. I was like, oh, come on, Canada. No, that's
I
good. That's
mean,
good.
Canada's quite bad. I mean,
It is on the
is quite
scale
bad
though of countries, and I
compared to
wanted to
States. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and there is more people per capita in the United States than Canada, so I didn't want to compare apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But almost 500,000 people in the States are homeless, and yet they are a first world, developed, progressive, superior society. Another comparison is Seychelles and the United States. So Seychelles and the United States, Seychelles is an African country, for those of you who may not know. They both share the highest incarcerated rates of any other countries on the planet.
Ooh, didn't know that.
So who's first world and who's third world, Ranky McGee's, right? So
Mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm.
generalize those kinds of terms and to pinpoint them on, I mean, it's a racist term, but yeah, it lacks that legitimacy. When you look at the data
Yeah.
and you look at the facts, it doesn't match up. It doesn't line up.
And although I think when you talk about like a country, no matter first world, third world, it's not just also economic. It should not only be about economic situation too, right? Because of course, yeah, we all need money to live, but then a person, a life, a society is more. You cannot just measure society by money or economic growth,
No,
no, or just
exactly.
or solely on democracy system. And also, even I have also a lot of things to say about so-called democracy system. Like, for example, the states, you have.
Yes.
I don't really think the democracy you're having is really democracy. Let's just be honest there.
Yep. I
Um,
agree. I agree.
so like even the word democracy itself is very, in many ways, can be easily misinterpreted. And on top of that, culture, human interaction and prosperity and in diversity, and prosperity and equality, men and one of the equality is not just about racial, of course, it's also about men and women. And so I think using first world and third world country, it is you also just mentioned that, but also like too generalized. It's very generalized, and then it gives this country, maybe in many ways this first world country does have more economic power, but it does not say any other thing that measures a society.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I completely
is
agree. Because
yeah.
even having all the economic power or having the world's biggest military, while you also have the almost the highest homelessness rate and the highest incarceration rates,
Mm-hmm.
and who's determining like who's the first world, third world stamp person? Like who's the one making that call? That's why none of us can.
The
That's why we
the first world countries are making the call. That's
right.
why they put them the first.
Exactly. So who's right? So I think if anything, the people who've been pushed down should be the ones defining the terms, really.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah.
which kind of
Yeah.
segues to kind of what would be, do you have
The
any
alternative.
ideas? Yeah, the alternatives. Do you have any thoughts on what the alternatives might be, Hoshin?
I just think we should get rid of any terms that just ranks us.
Yeah.
Like any terms that
Yes.
defines or puts the idea of me versus you or me versus them kind of like situation. We should always get rid of that because the world is way more complex than that. It's never just you/me, black/white. There's many gray
Right.
area in the middle, and we should just, altogether get rid of those words.
Just get rid of it. I completely agree. I mean, there's a great article that actually came out of the National Library of Medicine. We'll
Mm.
link it in our website, but they did have some recommendations and they actually alluded to some other alternatives that people have been gaining momentum to push for. One term I've never heard before, there is momentum to alter the first world term to walled world.
Walled
Walled, that it's
or
got
like,
walls around it.
oh,
Their point is it illustrates how 14% of the world's population hides behind a fortress or a wall, which denies entry to the world outside. And it's based on
oh.
wealth. So, and if we want some actual examples, this is clear from the physical walls that have come up across the world, such as Palestine and Israel, Trump's border wall between Mexico and the US.
Yeah.
And then it also signifies the political barriers created, for instance, by Fortress Europe to keep out migrants and refugees from entering the continent. So I understand that term. And I get why people would want to push for that because, I mean, but like you said, this term will still divide us. It will
Yeah.
still create that kind of othering that we're trying to go away from.
I
Um,
agree.
there's terms people have said, low income countries, right? Or underdeveloped. But I think those terms actually still do a disservice because it actually neglects the reasons that those countries have a low income, right?
I
It
know.
neglects the faults of colonialism and it releases the accountability. Well, this is your problem. You fix it.
True.
right?
They can say
S-
post-colonialism countries.
Yes, it's a very long term. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very long.
It
Yeah.
really is. It really is. Yeah. It was interesting in that interview, the NPR interview. The person interviewed some Maasai tribesmen from Kenya on their thoughts about third world and about the phrase developing country. And in Swahili, they said developing country would be translated as countries that are growing, which this Maasai tribesman said, it's a lovely phrase, but it's pretty long. So, which is,
It
yeah,
is pretty long.
yeah, it is. It is. There's
Yeah.
another, there's another way to do it. Like, if you're going to talk about a part of the world, talk about the part of the world, right? If you're going to talk about West Africa, say West Africa. If you're going to
Yeah,
talk
that's
about Southern India, talk about Southern India.
yeah, that's another thing. I understand that people might just want to generalize things. It's easier to just
Right.
to not give specifics,
Hmm.
because it's just easier for our brain. We don't have to think about that much detail. But then when you talk about like things like that, that actually, so complex, you cannot generalize that much.
Right.
At some point you have to give specifics. Otherwise, it can
Yes.
be very harmful
Yes. And I think that's what colonialism has done. It's generalized things way too much. It has said you are
because they
this,
don't know.
period,
Because they
because
don't
they don't
know.
know.
There's
Exactly.
they're hiding their ignorance.
Hmm.
Those
And
terms, yeah.
yeah, and suffocating curiosity,
Oh, true. Oh, that
right?
wow, that is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're suffocating that interest and that humanitarian thing that all of us is like, huh, I don't know that. I'm curious about it. I'm going to find out instead of run away and hide or run away and shut down or smack it to death, right?
Yeah. And definitely there's also kind of like pride there. Okay, I don't know, but I'm too proud to admit that. So
Completely.
I'm just,
Oh, yeah.
my pride had to be preserved. So I'm just gonna
Yes.
keep you generalize you and then pretend that I know it.
Yeah.
And now I know because I have a term, right? I must know it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Um, yeah. I just think it's interesting that people will default to it's kind of like if you're driving down the highway and you see something in the middle of the road and you're just like, I don't know what that is. I don't even know if I should drive over it. And the human response would be to drive around it to keep yourself and whatever's there safe. But
Hmm.
colonialism just drives right through it and doesn't care, right?
Yeah, I know. It
I don't
also
know.
kind of remind me of a little bit of like how, I mean, colonialism in many ways also is a product of patriarchy too, right?
Sure.
It's like,
Yep.
yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
they can
Mm-hmm.
show that vulnerability of being ignorant, of being curious, of showing emotion, of care. So in some
Right.
sense, it's also, a product of that as well.
Right. It's a really intricate ecosystem.
Very
Oh my
intricate.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
We could
and I
spend another
think,
day talking
oh
about
my
it.
gosh, we could. We totally could. And just real quickly, I think it's really, really important that when we are thinking about terms, if you have been even using the term low income, high income countries, I think we need to acknowledge that a person's identity is more than money.
Hmm.
This is where
That's exactly my
capitalism is
point.
woven in, right?
I
Right?
agree.
That who
People are
we
obsessed
are
with
is
that.
more than like a number attached to it or a dollar sign, right? That identity is culture, it's history, it's tradition, it's language, it's experiences, it's food, it's memory, it's monument, it's life.
Yeah.
So if we are going to use a term, don't use any term and just, recognize that a country is unique for the country that they are, not for
Yeah.
what we've
Of
created it to be.
circumstance. Yeah. Of
Mhm.
circumstance, of history, of many things. Yeah. Of its
Yeah.
people. That's
Hmm.
complex. And also to just I want to add a point onto you that the so-called low income or people that like to use money to measure human being or countries in general
Right.
is for me it's always my experience is always the people who has money like to use money to measure others. And anyone that's the middle class or lower class tend to be, for my experiences, tend to be, less so.
Yeah.
It's always
It's true.
is people usually people in power and has the money like to measure people in using money to measure people,
Yeah.
which is
The
such a
most It's gross.
yeah,
The
it's
most
gross, so
generous
gross.
people that I have met were people who barely had anything.
I agree. Oh my God, that remind me of a saying a teacher once told me when I was in middle school that generosity is not when you have $100, give someone $10. It's when you have $100, give someone $99. That's
Mm,
true generosity.
yeah.
So all these people, rich people doing it, philanthropy and giving like millions of dollars when they have billions of dollars sitting. That's not generosity.
Right.
Because for them,
Right.
it's nothing. It does not have no impact on their life. But for people who giving so little, but that little thing that they gave is a huge part of their life, that is true generosity.
And I think that's the kind of generosity we need when we think about other countries on our planet.
I
We need to
agree. Yeah.
give that kind of verbal generosity, that language generosity for other countries to not only define themselves, but for countries to be known for who they are and not what we've created them to be.
Hmm.
So that's yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's third world.
That's a good note to end on. That's a great note to end on.
Yes,
Yes, I like
it is.
that.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. Yeah, I think yeah, it was really good to research because it's always made me cringe, and so I'm really glad we did this episode. So,
Yeah, thank you so much for doing all the research and
yes, of
taught me
course.
so much and also guide me through this conversation as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, are you ready for
Yeah,
your quiz, my love?
I am very ready for my quiz. Are you ready?
Okay, I am ready. Yes, I will let you go first since you're wearing a nice button-up shirt today.
I mean, your dress is really nice too. Remember
Thank
where you wore
you.
that? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I wore
we
this to our
went
little, yeah,
little
our
party. That is a retro party that we
yes.
went to. That
That
was a
is. It
great
was so good.
time.
Great time. Yes, my love. Yeah.
Okay. Um, NATO?
Yes. Well, I don't
Yes.
know him, but I have heard of his puppets. Yes.
It's puppets, yes.
Sorry.
Oh, my question is a multiple choice question. So NATO have 12 founding members, and then they
Okay.
have more members after. So I'm gonna give you three choices, and you just choose one that is not the founding member.
Oh, okay. Of NATO.
Choose the
Okay.
one that is not a founding member, okay?
Mm.
First, you have Canada. Second, you have Belgium. Third, you have Finland.
I'm gonna go with Canada.
Canada is not the founding member, you think?
Yeah.
Final answer?
Final answer.
Sorry, it's
Oh
not. Is
no.
oh,
What is it?
Canada is one of the founding
It
member.
is. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Finland
Dang.
is not the founding member. It
Finland.
joined the
Okay.
most recent 2023.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I give you Finland. It's like the most
Wow.
recent.
Interesting. I mean, I knew Belgium because I just figured that they had maybe more of a military mindset, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
Sorry, babe.
okay, all right, Canada, I still love you sometimes. All right, Hoshin, how many countries gained independence during the Cold War? And I'll give you the dates: 1947 to 1991.
How many
How
countries?
many countries gained their independence? Yeah, you
Oh my
can.
God, 30 plus.
Yeah, definitely more than 30. Do you
Oof.
want to? Yeah, higher,
80 plus?
higher.
What? 125.
Very close. 117.
Oh, wow,
And
that is
that's just during the Cold
Cold
War
War.
era.
Yeah.
That's not post Cold War or prior to the Cold War. So 117 countries, because I think all but maybe 22 countries on the planet were colonized, I believe.
Yeah.
So yes, 117 in a span
Yeah.
of,
Ooh.
which is amazing. I mean, within a span of like, 40 something years, they
Yeah.
undid a
But
lot. Yeah.
oh,
Still
the
working
fact
on
that they
it.
need to be,
I know, it's
independent, that also
awful.
says, oh,
It's awful.
it
Yeah,
is so
it's
awful.
awful. But
Yeah.
yeah, power
I'm
to the
glad that they
people.
are.
Yes.
Power to the people indeed.
Yes, exactly.
Independency
That's
to
right. That's
freedom.
right. Yes.
Yes.
Punch you in the anyway, we're not gonna punch. We're non-violent. But Hoshin, do you know what we're gonna talk about next week?
Yeah, the next one we're gonna talk about is something we already kind of mentioned a couple episodes ago that we kind of talked about, but we changed our
Really?
mind last
Really?
minute. Yeah. We're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about the
Yes.
integration model.
Woohoo! I am so in love. I cannot wait. I prepped this a long time ago, so I'm going to
I
have to refresh
know.
my memory. But yes, we're going to talk about integration and all those models and how they help and hurt immigrants coming to Canada. And we're going to take a
Yeah,
more
so
introverted look to Canada's immigration. population.
It's also it also explains a lot of kind of the path that a lot of immigrants go through in terms of moving to a new country.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're
Yes.
immigrant, remember to tune in and listen to
Yes.
this.
That's right. Share with your friends, your family, and your pets because my pet immigrated. So, they've got to be
Yeah,
fortunate.
share it on your dating profile too to show people that you are cultured.
There you go. Yes. Tell them that you listen to Canadian Salad Podcast and they'll be like,
Exactly.
wow,
Tell
dating, like
tell your
prestigious
dates.
dating right there. Yeah. Amazing.
Anyway, thank you for
All right,
listening to
everyone.
us.
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Hoshin. And we will see you all next week.
See you next week. Bye.
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 Canadian Salad is written and produced in British Columbia, Canada by Hoshin Ho and Andrea McCoy. Theme music is by Naver Avetyan from Pixabay.
This has been a good Janklin production.